Carlos Rodón has been sensational for the San Francisco Giants, looking like a legitimate Cy Young contender through his first 4 starts. And often we talk about his deal as a 2-year, $44 million deal with the Giants, but in reality, he potentially has the ability to opt out after this season. So is it more likely that he opts out or that he works out an extension at some point with the San Francisco Giants? We'll talk about that question and we'll get to many others on today's show.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And coming up on today's show, it is a mailbag episode. And so jumping right in, the first question comes from Razor Ramen, who asks, Carlos Rodón more likely to opt out after this year or Giants work out an extension? And then relatedly, Cobert Gobert asks, is Carlos Rodón eligible for the qualifying offer if he reaches 110 innings and opts out of his second year? And how might that affect his market? So these are good questions, relevant questions, because Carlos Rodón is out here with a 1.17 ERA, leading the major leagues in strikeout rate. He's just been overpowering, and he goes tonight against the Dodgers. It's going to be a really fascinating matchup there. But it's often reported that it's a 2-year, $44 million deal because that is guaranteed to him. But if he reaches 110 innings, he can opt out. And if he pitches like he's pitching now, there's no reason why he would essentially elect to go for a 1-year, $22.5 million deal when he could reach the open market and get upwards of what Kevin Gausman got. That's how well Carlos Rodón is pitching right now. Obviously, it's still early and he would have to sustain that. And if there's an injury and he doesn't reach 110 innings, that second year is just guaranteed. And he could pass 110 innings and then get hurt, and then he would probably not opt out because he's guaranteed money even though he's dealing with an injury. So with that out of the way, I think it's more likely that he opts out than works out an extension with the Giants, because financially, from his perspective, he has so much to gain by just going out there, continuing to have the type of season he's had so far, and surpassing 110 innings, opting out, and then hitting the open market. Like I said, I think that with the way he's pitching, he would be in line for probably more money than Kevin Gausman got. The only reason he didn't get that kind of deal this past offseason was because teams had some concerns about how he dealt with some injuries in the second half last season. Velocity dropped. And so he got, a high average annual value. It's actually the same average annual value as Gausman, but over 2 guaranteed years versus 5 for Kevin Gausman. And so the Giants working out an extension with him, I think you mean like mid-season, as opposed to like him maybe opting out and then the Giants signing him to another free agent contract, like maybe a mid-season extension a la Brandon Crawford. I think it is far more likely that he opts out because he doesn't really stand to gain all that much from a mid-season deal, especially because the Giants probably don't want to go long-term. And so he's already kind of guaranteed this short-term high AAV deal. And so what really does he have to stand to gain? What really does he stand to gain by maybe adding one additional guaranteed season? I'm not sure the Giants really want to go past 2 or 3 years for a pitcher at any point in terms of guaranteeing them these contracts. And so as it pertains to the qualifying offer, though, this is a really interesting point because, yes, the Giants could give him a qualifying offer if he opts out. And for those who don't know, the qualifying offer is a 1-year offer, and you can give it to your free agents under 2 conditions. Number 1, they've never received one before. And number 2, they were on your team all season, and he would have been on the team all season, and he's never received one in the past. And I just have to say, the qualifying offer might not exist next year. We'll get to that in a second. But the qualifying offer is the average of the top, the top 125 highest paid players in the league. And so this year, I think it was $18.4 million. And so next year, I mean, assume it's around the same number, $18.5 million. So of course the Giants would give him that if he has a good season and opts out. But it might not exist. And we need to think about that, because as part of this new collective bargaining agreement that was reached post-lockout, or to end the lockout, the two sides, the league and the players, agreed that they have until July 25th to agree to an international draft that would start in 2024. If they agree, the league wants it, the players are more skeptical about it, but if they agree to have it, then the league agrees that the qualifying offer will go away. The players very much don't like the qualifying offer, because what happens is a team like the Giants gives the qualifying offer to Rodón, and if he were to reject it, then Rodón, in addition to costing a lot of money for whoever ends up signing him, that team also surrenders a draft pick that the Giants gain by losing Carlos Rodón. And so this hurts their market, and that's what Colbert is asking here. How would that affect his market? It would affect it negatively. We've seen plenty of guys whose markets really are affected by the qualifying offer. In certain cases, I mean, a lot of good free agents got it last year, and they ended up signing big deals anyway. So if he has a monster season like he's starting to have right now, I don't think it would be super negatively affecting him, but it certainly is a factor, and the Giants would stand to gain a draft pick even if they don't sign him. So at least you get something for losing him if you were to ultimately lose him, which again, I think opting out the most likely. And then from a financial perspective, Rodón probably wants to go out there and just get the most guaranteed money he can versus like the most per year that he can, which maybe the Giants over 2 years or 3 years would give him the most per year, but the most total guaranteed money is going to come from the most total years. And that's where the Giants tend to fall out of those discussions, for better or worse. For me, it's often for better, because if you look at long-term deals for pitchers, they almost always don't seem to work out towards the end of those deals. So anyway, that kind of covers that question. Coming up next, we've got a question about whose jersey on the Giants is it safe to buy. With guys like Rodón, you fall in love with them, but then they might be out the door pretty soon. For Rodón, it literally could be next year he's gone. So whose jersey can you safely buy? We'll talk about that and we'll get to so many other questions as well. But first, with spring in the air, it's a time of renewal and growth, personally and professionally. As your small business grows, LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, as promised, we are going to talk about jerseys. I think it's a good question, and I see this kind of sentiment expressed a lot. Like, who on the Giants can you safely commit to, right? Because it is a thing, right? You once you really fully embrace Kevin Gausman, maybe he's gone. And I'm also going to take the opportunity to address something I've been wanting to address for a long time as part of this question. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. So yeah, The next question comes from Captain Belt's Left Thumb, who asks, what player on the Giants right now is someone you could buy a jersey for and not look foolish in a few seasons when they end up on the Braves? Wow, that's one of those oddly specific questions, like maybe you bought a Alex Dickerson jersey or something. Let me know. I think that's funny. But yeah, so the way I'm going to tie this in with a broader point that I've continued to want to make but keep forgetting to make is that, generally speaking, it's the players who come up through your minor league system who are going to be here the longest and who you can grow the most attached to. Because when a guy comes up from the minors, they are under club control for 6 years of service time. It can be even more than 6 seasons because of guys being able to be optioned. And essentially, it's like a 6-year contract with 6 team options. So those are the guys who are going to be here consistently. And we haven't totally seen that yet in the Farhan Zaidi era. It did, I think, matter that they lost a year of development in 2020. There was no minor league season, so it kind of set back some development for a lot of guys. But when you think about Marco Luciano, Kyle Harrison, Luis Matos, Elliot Ramos, Joey Bart, these guys, like when they start funneling into the major leagues, they're the guys, especially if they perform and are good, you got them for a while. They're not going anywhere unless they trade them, but they probably aren't going to trade them. And so we haven't totally seen that, had that opportunity yet to get attached to these homegrown players. Logan Webb is an exception. So he's the guy who comes to mind first when I'm answering this question. Logan Webb is good. He's young. He's homegrown. And he's under club control through the 2025 season. And he's probably going to become an extension candidate at some point. So for me, they're not trading Logan Webb, and he's going to be here at least 4 seasons, counting this one more. He's already been here a few years. And so he's the number one guy. If you're a Logan Webb fan, go out and safely buy a Logan Webb jersey. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. And then you've got other guys like Mike Yastrzemski, who's already been here since 2019, and he's under club control through 2025. So 4 additional seasons, 4 seasons counting this one. And Lamont Wade Jr., kind of the same. Not kind of the same, exactly the same, under club control through 2025. And so both of those guys aren't necessarily like cemented in these roles, and the Giants could at some point go another direction. Like if the performance falls off, being platoon players for the most part, they're not guaranteed of anything. I think Logan Webb is a little bit of a safer bet, but you can feel pretty good, I would say, about Lamont Wade Jr. or Mike Yastrzemski. Yastrzemski probably a little bit safer because he's done it for longer and they're clearly committed to him. But for Wade, the performance was good last year and he's under club control, like I said, for 4 seasons, counting this one. Darren Ruff, if you're a Darren Ruff fan, we'll talk about his struggles so far this year, but he's signed for 22, 23, and a club option for 24. And DeSclafani is signed through 2024. Alex Wood is signed for 2 seasons. But for me, it's like Webb and Yastrzemski, and probably Wade as well, are the guys you can just kind of pretty safely go out there. Webb being the safest. Yaz and Wade, you'll have to make a judgment call on that. But if they continue to perform, they'll stay. That's my analysis there. So hopefully that helped answer your question. You can go to Roster Resource on Fangraphs and see how much club control there is for all these different players. Oh, and Joey Bart, he's got to perform as well. It's not a guarantee that they're going to keep playing him if he struggles. I would say so far he's doing a good job in 2022. And if he performs, he'll stay, essentially. And so just keep an eye out for his performance. And then, like I said, as guys continue to come up through the minors, if they're good, they're probably not going anywhere for at least 6 years. And hopefully soon that becomes like an every year occurrence where you're introducing new, young, talented players onto the major league roster and they're here to stay. We'll talk about Elliot Ramos as well, but the reason Ramos came up and then went away is more so because he hasn't dominated in AAA. He's kind of struggling in AAA, so that's the reason he's not here. We'll get to that in a minute. Next question comes from Jacob, who asks, if Cobb and or Tony are out for much longer, do you see Junis officially being added to the rotation. So I guess this question came to me before Alex Cobb came back and probably before Jacob Junis was optioned. Got a lot of questions about why did they option Jacob Junis. For me, it was to maximize their roster. He had just pitched a lot of innings, so they knew he wasn't going to be available for at least like 5 days. So they optioned him to get somebody onto the roster who could pitch in the more immediate future. And of course, Cobb came back on Sunday. But DeSclafani is going to be out for a little while, at least a few weeks is what we've heard. That was about a week ago. So maybe 2 weeks is like the very optimistic outlook. So I think that Junis could certainly get an opportunity. I don't think it's guaranteed. I think that he could just continue to pitch in the role that he's pitched in with an opener and then bringing in Junis. It does force the other teams to set their lineups for like the potential that Sam Long could go an inning or 2 or 3 maybe, and then you bring in Junis so that you got a lefty and then a righty. So I think they like that pairing. But also Junis has pitched well enough to warrant an opportunity in that starting rotation. One thing to keep in mind as well is they've got Matthew Boyd, who they gave a $5.2 million contract to, and he's supposed to be ready to come back in about a month. And for me, he's a guy who's like a starter and not so much a reliever. And so I don't know exactly how it's all going to play out. I think that when Boyd comes back, if DeSclafani and Wood and everybody else is healthy, maybe they roll with a 6-man rotation. I honestly have no idea, but in that circumstance, Junis may just continue to provide the role that he's provided, which is he can give you length out of the pen and like a lot of length and quality length. And so I'm not 100% sure, but it certainly is a possibility that he could just earn his way into a regular rotation spot moving forward. So coming up next, we're going to talk about Elliot Ramos. Why has he not been up more permanently, or when will he be up more permanently? And how about Darren Ruff? What is the level of concern with Ruff, and how long can the Giants wait while he continues to struggle for the most part? But first, betonline.net is your #1 source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the MLB season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. They've got a lot of Giants over there at BetOnline. We were telling you before the season started to check out the Carlos Rodón Cy Young odds. I hope that you jumped on that because he's put himself into frontrunner status through these first 4 starts. But, you know, now those odds might not look so attractive, but there's a lot of stuff you can check out. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the exact same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers online for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every customer. You can find out what part you need from the dealership or whoever and just check out the same part on Rock Auto. See how much money you can save. You can buy it yourself, bring it back to whoever gave you the estimate. They'll install it for you and you've just saved a bunch of money. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, as promised, we are going to talk about Elliot Ramos, Darren Ruff, and maybe some more that we can get to here. But the question comes from Ian, who asks, any idea when Elliot Ramos might get called up more permanently? So the answer, I have this on good authority, is that he needs to dominate in AAA before that they consider a more permanent call-up. And it's kind of funny, like we see the clamoring for Elliot Ramos all the time, but if you look at his numbers, he's got an 80 weighted runs created plus in AAA. So in what universe do you go from struggling, being below average offensively in the minors, and then coming to the majors and being really good, right? So if you can't prove that you can dominate the highest level of the minors, they're not convinced that you can perform at the major league level, of course. And when we look at it, Elliot Ramos also had an 80 weighted runs created plus in AAA last year. So this is a growing sample. It's over 300 plate appearances where he's been significantly below league average in AAA. He does have some interesting kind of numbers, like the strikeout rate is way down from where it was last year in AAA. The walk rate is way up. So these are some indicators you like to see. The average on balls in play is low. So maybe it's, again, I've talked about this 1,000 times, but average on balls in play, not necessarily luck, but it is sustainability. And so maybe that he's due for that to go up. And he's not really hitting for any power to speak of in AAA. It's a really hot offensive environment too. And so you really need to put up some numbers in order to prove that you've dominated. And when I say I have this on good authority, on Alex Pavlovich and Cole Kuiper's podcast, they talked to Farhan Zaidi, or Pavlovich did, and he basically asked that same question. And Zaidi to Farhan Zaidi, and Zaidi's answer was that they need guys to dominate in AAA before they warrant a extended major league look. And so just check out the numbers, go to Fangraphs and look at the weighted runs created plus and see that he's been below average in AAA. So why would he get that opportunity right now to come to the major leagues? And in 2021 in AA, he was just 7 points above league average. And so he really hasn't dominated the upper levels of the minors to this point, and they need to see that first. So that's the answer there. Next question comes from Nicholas Bosa, at Nicholas Bosa, who says, Darren Ruff, how long can the Giants wait? Should they have been more aggressive in free agency for a designated hitter? So my answer here is that we're well before the point of being super concerned about Darren Ruff. And this question came before Darren Ruff had kind of a breakout game. I think it was on Saturday in the win when he had 3 hits. And prior to that, the day before on Friday, he had at least 2 balls that were hit over 105 miles an hour that were caught. And so he did that in the very early part of the season. He was hitting some balls really hard that were caught. And then he's done it more lately again. Like 105 plus miles an hour is almost always a hit. And he's hit into a lot of outs on balls that were hit that well. And Gabe Kapler said it. He can't remember seeing someone quite this unlucky. And when we look at the expected numbers, he's got an expected weighted on base average of 320 versus an actual weighted on base average of 243. And so he's proven that he can hit, man. I mean, he had a 141 weighted runs created plus in 2020 in 100 plate appearances, and then he backed it up with a 144 weighted runs created plus in 312 plate appearances in 2021. And so you're talking about a 400 plate appearance sample where he's been about 40 points above league average offensively versus a 96 plate appearance sample where he's been 60 points below. And so for me, I mostly want to just combine all of that and say that's kind of where I'm at with Darren Ruff. We don't like overly dwell on the small sample of the present struggles. You kind of weight the most recent year a little bit more, but you don't just throw out the last 2 years and completely evaluate a player based on the most recent 96 plate appearances, 22 games. You just don't do that. And so if you combine all the years since 2020 with the Giants, Darren Ruff has a 127 weighted runs created plus, 255 average, 364 on base, 458 slugging. That's a 204 isolated power. So I'm kind of there with Darren Ruff. If we look at the numbers against lefties, a 151 weighted runs created plus, and the numbers against righties in his Giants career, a 108 weighted runs created plus. So this is where I'm at, is looking at the numbers against righties. It may be, because that's the thing this year, is that he's been an everyday guy. And I mean, to be like average or a little bit better against righties and then just to kill lefties is still super valuable. And it doesn't necessarily pigeonhole you into a platoon, especially because he is a little bit of an underrated defender. But I think when they're at full strength, based on what we've seen, you may go another direction, but they're very much not at full strength. So these numbers don't tell me he's like a must sit against right-handed pitching. I think you can still throw him out there, and he's one of the more dangerous guys in your lineup on any given night, even though he struggled so far. So I don't think, like, they didn't want to target one guy to be a DH. They want to use that spot to kind of rotate guys through. It's just that right now they're very much not at full strength. But Tommy La Stella is a guy who can like cycle through the DH spot. Wilmer Flores can cycle through the DH spot, and on and on. And once they're at full strength, I think it's not going to really be as much of a problem. And at this point, I'd probably ease off him a little bit against right-handed pitching if they had more players to kind of fill in. But right now they're so short-handed, just keep running him out there. And I think that ultimately he'll probably come out of it like we started to see signs of the last few days. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, but please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. I'm Ben Kaspick. Thanks again for checking out the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Stay Locked On Giants.